Hi, I'm your friend Claude,
And it's cousin Adam.
and this is episode 2 of WAMCast.
Episode 2, Electric Boogaloo, my favorite episode. We're coming to you on Christmas Eve morning. We want to thank everybody first and foremost who listened to our debut podcast. If you are interested, you can find us on Facebook at the WAM Network. That's WAM Network. We have about 60 likes so far, so we're really excited about that, and we appreciate everybody who's liked our page and listened. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, leave a comment on our Facebook page with anything you may agree or disagree with, or any topic you would like to hear us cover. And as I said, our friend Claude, we are coming to you on Christmas Eve. So are you in the Christmas spirit this year?
Christmas is stressful, is it not? I mean, especially as you leave childhood behind and begrudgingly accept your mannish fate.
Indeed.
It's just, I woke up this morning, I have, I don't know, a third, probably less than a third of my presents wrapped, and Jesus Christ, that's such a first world problem, but it's bumming me out because I'm terrible at wrapping presents. It takes me forever, and I still have so much of the mountain ahead of me. So that's number one. Number two, Christmas is weirder and weirder as you're an adult because, at least in my family, a lot of us have the kind of jobs that don't really give a fuck that it's Christmas. So I think this year is the first time that I can remember, maybe the second, that my immediate family isn't really all going to be able to have Christmas on Christmas morning. My mom's got to work. My sister can't make it up, so we kind of did Christmas with her a little earlier in the month. So it's an odd dynamic. I'm sure you've got a whole different kind of stress from your perspective.
Well, yeah, it's it goes along with the constant dialogue of things being better when you're a kid than when you're an adult, because I think a big thing is that even when we're getting older, we never really realized just the rampant, routine commercialization of what really, in its roots, is a religious holiday. And even if you're not a Christian or religious, most people still celebrate Christmas because it is a holiday.
Sure.
Regardless of that, we never really noticed how much Christmas, and really it's spreading into other holidays too, like Valentine's Day and Easter and things like that, how it just is constantly rammed down your throat. And it's just a constant barrage of, you need to buy this stuff, and you need to make your kids happy, and you need to make your wife happy, and you need to make your girlfriend happy, and your boyfriend happy, or whatever. And it makes you feel like a piece of crap if you don't buy something.
Yeah, they'll sell you the tools to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with Valentine's Day. Like, they have all these jewelry stores, doing commercials for Valentine's Day. Like, oh shit, like I have to buy my significant other a piece of jewelry on Valentine's Day. Like, I hate Valentine's Day anyway. And I think it's a sham Hallmark holiday. But
Right.
It's the same thing with Christmas. And I think that loses a lot of the anticipation, the commercialization makes you lose a lot of your anticipation and the happy feelings you have towards Christmas. Because I remember being younger, we're like, oh wow, it's Christmas, we're gonna have school off, we're gonna get presents, we're gonna spend time with family, it's gonna be great, we're gonna have parties.
Right.
How am I going to pay for this? And that's really my number one concern this year was like, how are we going to pay for this? And I'll admit, when I got together with my wife a few years ago, as she has kids, I got a little bit more into the spirit, because that first year, we went out and we were shopping for Christmas presents and we were playing Santa Claus and all that stuff, and it was actually kind of fun. And I kind of felt like, oh, this is great. I'm giving back. We're getting presents for the kids. I can buy all these toys. This is awesome. And it's kind of like that last year a little bit, but it's kind of worn off this year. And I think a lot of it is because it's just catching up, with, like I said, the commercialization and, being jammed down my throats, and I'm worrying about how I'm going to pay for it. So it really, it's stressful. And, it's here tomorrow, and I'm glad it's over with, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. But yeah, it's this year I could just say, let it be over and done with, and, that's it. So that's my take on it this year. Hopefully I'll come around a little bit more next year. So.
Well, I'll up the ante on the negative Nelly aspect of what we're talking about and say that I'm glad it'll be over, or I'm glad it's over, is pretty much a microcosm of my feelings for the whole year of 2014.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting and telling that you say it's tomorrow and I'm glad it's over. I mean, it hasn't even happened yet, and you're already glad it's over because you're just that ready to put it behind you.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, I guess, Arnold Schwarzenegger traveled back in time to destroy Christmas for you, but ultimately save you from your own spending habits.
Let's later on in this podcast, let's talk about the new Terminator movie, because I saw the trailer for that, and we need to discuss that. Just so you know, I mean, I'm serious. We need to discuss that.
Well, I am. It'll be a woefully one-sided discussion because I have yet to see the trailer, and
okay. Well, I'll fill you in with the significant parts of it.
I've yet to see the last two movies, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 2014 in general, for me anyway, it's been a pretty rough year. I used to have this thing about even numbered years were good, and odd numbered years were the bad ones. Like that fucking matters, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the universal overlords care what number it is. It's some weird little superstition or whatever that started, I think, around the year 2000, because for some reason that was a great year for me. It was my senior year of high school, and of course that was when high school finally became something fun or manageable or whatever. It all kind of clicked months before it ended forever, which is also another running theme in my life. But I don't know, that stupid even year thing kind of kept up for, I don't know, I want to say until about 2008. And then it started to just kind of do whatever it wanted to do. I don't know. I think I sort of forced it to do that. And the internet is crapping out on us, so we're going to take a short little pause here. Come right back. Technology is beautiful. The internet hates us and our entire show. So I think what I was talking about was my ridiculous notion that even numbered years are awesome and odd numbered years suck ass. And at some point around 2008, that all stopped being even remotely true. Let's blame Obama. The year of Obama.
I blame his predecessor, but whatever.
I blame the whole system because, I don't know, it's against us, man. It's against us. But 2014, I am not sad to see it go. How about you?
I don't really like have like good years and bad years anymore. I don't think. It's kind of funny because like when we start, you started tracking that like your last year of high school. It's almost like as you come of age is when you. I mean, it's not like you ever really had a bad year before you come of age and you're on your own and you start doing things by yourself and you realize how tough the world is, which is kind of funny. High school for me was never really fun at all. I wasn't like a complete outcast, but I definitely wasn't one of like the cool kids or whatever. So I never really cared too much about my high school career, and I was actually glad that it was over with. But I think this has been one of my worst years, maybe like financially. Like it's been really tough that way. So I'm kind of excited to start over because it's like my company's restructuring and everything. I'm just kind of getting sick of working there. It might be time for a change. I'm not really happy or sad or whatever to see the year go by, but here we are on the cusp of a new year. So
yeah, it's the year of hoverboards. It's the year of self-tying shoes and clothes that fit themselves to your body. If Back to the Future 2 is an accurate predictor of future events, 2015 is going to rule.
Yeah, that was funny. I did read something about that on the internet, and I didn't realize we were at that point already, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is 2015 when they went into the future, and there was flying cars, and it's nothing like that. So that was funny, but...
It's a huge bummer. I don't know. I'm going to come out of the closet as one of the people that believes, at least in some part, in the concept of planned obsolescence and, in terms of things like cars being permanently kind of suspended in time in terms of their technological advances and, keeping us beholden to the aftermarket parts industry. That's huge. When your timing belt goes, you gotta run down to Napa or whatever you got in your area. Tires need to be replaced, and on and on and on, ball joints, whatever it is. I'm not a car guy, but it's interesting that car technology, by and large, really hasn't advanced in any significant way for decades, and I don't think we'll ever have flying cars, honestly. And maybe it's a good thing.
I agree with that. I think a lot of our problem is obviously our dependence on foreign oil, and I think that as long as that is what runs our economy, like there will be no advances with cars or anything. And I mean, there's technology out there. We can make electric cars and not use it, but it's not a oil so much that like if you don't use oil, like the whole world's gonna collapse, and it's a sad state of affairs, And I think you're right. We're stuck in a time where we can't do anything but have a combustible engine that runs on gas, to use it. And we're wrapped up in this. I mean, we get in wars over oil. A lot of our stock market is driven by oil companies, and it's terrible. What kind of hole we dug ourselves into when it comes to our dependence on oil. And I think you're right. I think the flying, like the automobile, is definitely something that we've been stuck in. Like it's been basically the same concept for 100 years now. And that we're never going to break that until we find some other way to handle the situation. But that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a pretty dark and bleak topic, honestly. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of peak oil, but there's sadly the credentials escape me. The original guy who published the study or the work on it. Basically, it's the idea that sometime in the 60s, the Earth's oil supply hit its peak. So now, every point forward from whenever in the 60s this was until forever is, we have less and less oil to meet our growing demand every year. And the fact of the matter is, it is a finite resource. It is something that, at least as of right now, December 24th, 2014, we have no widespread, readily available method of, producing our own oil or creating some sort of man-made version of it that can take the place and do the job. And I mean, everything is dependent on oil. I mean, even the tires on your car have a huge amount of oil goes into producing each one of those. We're talking about producing the metal that the car is made out of, or actually more and more plastic, which is oil itself. And on and on. Everything you think of is oil. So it's a pretty dark premise to imagine when it starts getting down to the real nitty gritty, what sort of traits it's going to reveal in humanity.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be make or break. We're going to have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably talk about that for hours too. But yeah, hey, it's Christmas Eve. Let's be a little more upbeat here.
Yeah, but then
just going off into tangents. That's fine.
Commercialism wins again, though. It's actually, it's been Christmas since about October 10th, at least in stores. I haven't. That's another thing about Christmas that's sort of bumming me out. But I guess I could rectify it anytime I wanted to. Really, I haven't really seen any of the good old fuzzy feeling Christmas specials, or anything like that this year. I haven't sat down and watched Rudolph or A Christmas Story or Christmas Vacation or any time-tested Christmas entertainment. Do they still, obviously you're the one with kids in the house. Do they still show that stuff on TV, and does it even matter anymore?
Yeah, they actually, a lot of these like stations and stuff. I'm not going to get into the politics of television or anything right now, and I'm not really a fan of a lot of like these TV channels and stuff. That's another topic for another time. But ABC Family does this thing called 25 Days of Christmas, and they actually show quite a few of the classic movies that I like. I know that network television has run Charlie Brown Christmas. They've run Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I'm talking like the old, versions that were produced years ago, not anything kind of like new or redone, because that would just be a travesty. But one of the scheduling faux pas they had this year was that one station ran Santa Claus is Coming to Town, at the same time ran Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, so basically you had to pick which one you wanted. It would have been funny if I researched that afterwards and see which one had the higher ratings that night. I did not. I could probably go back and check, but yeah, they've been running a lot of stuff, and a lot of the movies that I liked and still do like, they've been running. I know AMC has been running Home Alone and Home Alone 2 basically nonstop. And also ABC Family has been running the Santa Claus movies. It's funny because I've never really been a fan of Tim Allen, and I was talking to my wife about this last night because we were watching Christmas with the Cranks, which is based on the John Grisham novel Skipping Christmas. And it's weird because Tim Allen always does like this role where he has to be like this macho manly man, and he has to like make fun of anything that's not manly, and everything's just stupid unless it has to do with tools or something like that. Right. But regardless, the Santa Claus was always one of my go-to Christmas movies too, like the first one. But yeah, they've been running quite a bit of all those movies, and they actually have been running. I think I've seen Christmas Vacation on TV about 4 or 5 times already. So if anything, they're running everything too much. They don't have like a designated night, like tonight's the only night you can watch Christmas Vacation. Let's do it. They've been running it pretty much constantly. But yeah, they've definitely held up their end on that respect. So
yeah, silly me. I haven't had cable for almost 5 years, and thus no current TV in any form, so I'm still operating from the mindset of I guess it's the ancient mindset now of yeah, tonight's the night that they're showing Rudolph. Kids, gather around.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore. Obviously, you can see whatever you want any time of year, any day of the week. And I think it's a great thing that they haven't tried to replace those classic, mandatory almost holiday specials with some sort of updated CGI version. Because if you listen to the first podcast, you got a taste of at least my disdain for that practice.
Yep.
But I don't know. There is something to be said for the the event that it was when we were kids, and even before that. I don't know. I guess maybe having constant access doesn't always have its upsides, but perhaps because of that, there's another topic that's related that's been weighing on my mind recently. I think it happened officially in late September, early October, but I saw an article that says essentially Saturday morning cartoons are dead as of 2014. Apparently the CW was the last channel, the last network to show any kind of Saturday morning cartoons. They had some cartoon block called Vortex or something like that, and they canceled it, and it's now extinct. What do you make of that? I mean, I don't know about you, but that was my reason for living from like 1984 to like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, so about 2 months ago, and now I'm dead inside. Well, it's funny because I always think back to the old, in my mind, one of the only relevant comic strips in the history of mankind, Calvin and Hobbes, where Calvin would, you could not get him out of bed to save his life during a school day, but as soon as it turned Saturday, he was up at like 6 a.m. and was really excited because, he could watch his cartoons and he could hang around and eat cereal all morning. And, I kind of always, I didn't really model my behavior after Calvin from the comic strip, but I did have the same kind of sentiment that he did where, it's Saturday, I got a little bit older, I wanted to sleep in, but when I was younger, it was something where like, I gotta watch my cartoons, I gotta do this, and, I was really excited for it to be the weekend.
Right.
Excuse me. So yeah, it is really sad that, that part of our culture is now basically gone. The Saturday morning cartoon, I mean, that's been a mainstay for years and years and years, and it's weird because all the cartoons that, I have kids in the house, and, the cartoons they typically watch, I mean, if you turn on like Nickelodeon or something in the morning, they'll show like SpongeBob SquarePants, but there's not like a block of like 3 or 4 or 5 different shows that they would run right after another that you wanted to watch. I mean, it was always like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and things like that we watched when we were kids. And a lot of these popular cartoons, they're run in prime time now. Like Cartoon Network has these great cartoons that kids love, like Adventure Time and the regular show and Clarence and all these shows. They run at like 7 o'clock at night. So I think they've just lost the need to have to run these, commercials in like a block on the weekend where kids are going to watch them, because I guess like they get enough ratings that, kids watch them throughout the day, like, when they're done with their homework or something like that, or like after dinner. And it's really sad that, how things evolve and change like that. But I guess that's really the reality that we're in. And obviously, I've outgrown the Saturday morning cartoon, so it's not like a super shock to me, but still it's, just another piece of your past and your childhood that you hold on to. That's a good memory that's now, it's gone. And that people ahead of you are not going to be able to relive anymore. So what do you think about it?
I mean, it's another aspect of life that's forcing me to, I guess, slip further into adulthood and loosen up my grip that much more on my cherished past. I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow. I'll say that. It's not. You can't stop progress, I guess, if this is progress. But there's a billion reasons that I've seen attributed to why this happened, and I mean they all technically make sense, but it's just it's weird to think of kids now, I guess, not having any clue about so much of what was kind of daily and weekly life not that many years ago. I remember even back in, I tell this story all the time because it just blows my mind. I don't know. Even back in 2001, 2002, I was working at Toys R Us, and the 20th anniversary of E.T. was going on. And, E.T. is, at least to me, one of those movies that it just kind of transcends generations. I mean, it's E.T. It's this gigantic thing. It's not like the highest grossing movie in the world anymore or anything like that, but it's a cultural juggernaut.
Right.
And even back then, I was getting kids who were, 10, 12, years old, coming in there. And at the time, we had like a bunch of toys and promotions going on for the 20th anniversary, and the kids would see that and be like, "Who's ET? What's ET?" And it just, my jaw dropped, and that was, 12, 13 years ago. So, I don't know. I mean, things change and time marches on. I've heard it also blamed on this fear of childhood obesity and not having the kids sit in front of the TV for 4 hours at a time. And maybe there's some merit to that, but I don't know. For me, it was a really great part of growing up, and it's a little sad to see it go. I mean, but on the other hand, 52 years is a hell of a run.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you bring up Calvin and Hobbes, though. I mean, the article I'd read actually started out with a Calvin Hobbes strip to sort of tie it all together. I guess it was pretty funny. It was essentially what you said. Calvin, in some almost a caffeinated way, bursts out of bed and runs downstairs screaming about how it's Saturday and he's gonna get his cereal going and everything. And the end of the panel, or the last panel, is his dad like barely able to sit up, talking about how he can't believe he's up already. It's not even hardly light out at all, and he's put his pants on, and he says something to the effect of, "I'm going to the office so I can get some sleep."
Yeah, I actually remember that strip.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty perfect.
Yeah, actually, bringing up Calvin and Hobbes, I'll bring up a topic about that. I'm not sure how many people would be listening that actually remember or like that strip, but I think that was in itself a cultural phenomenon as well. And I think the weird thing about it is that the intellectual property of Calvin and Hobbes was never licensed beyond the comic strip. Like, there was never any, there was no Saturday morning special, there was no, or cartoon, there were no products that were licensed. Like, you couldn't get like a Calvin and Hobbes lunchbox, you couldn't get a stuffed Hobbes tiger or anything like that. And it's funny because, and basically I want to say genius behind that strip, Bill Watterson, is basically taking himself out of the public view. Like, I don't think anybody even really knows where this guy lives anymore, unless you're a friend or a relative. Like, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, do you agree with his decision not to do that, or would you have liked to see more stuff about that? What do you think?
Well, first off, I think it's deliciously ironic on behalf of whoever wrote that article to use that as to kick off an article about Saturday morning TV, considering that there wasn't any kind of Calvin and Hobbes cartoon involved.
Right.
I think anytime somebody can stand their ground and stick to their guns and whatever other cliched saying you can imagine, anytime somebody can do that in the face of potentially millions of dollars and, corporations and lawyers and all this pressure in your face to sort of sell out and just let us take care of the details. You just collect the money. A lot of people are seduced by that with their intellectual properties, and the fact that he wasn't, I think, is respectable. And I honestly, I don't think it hurt his business in any way. I think putting out the collections and having it in circulation every Sunday, and probably more frequently, was certainly enough to keep it out there. It's not like I can't think of anybody who at least has never heard of Calvin and Hobbes. I think it's pretty popular. Part of me wonders too, though, if there wasn't really a gigantic market necessarily for that type of merchandising. Even though it's about the adventures of a little kid, I don't know that. I still think it was more of an adult-oriented strip. Maybe I'm wrong. It's pretty sophisticated writing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the average kid wouldn't have latched on. Maybe if they did have a cartoon, it would have been different. I'm sure they would have altered the style and everything to sort of make it more digestible to the average child. But no, anytime somebody can stick to their guns like that, I have to give them respect, because it's few and far between, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think along the lines of what you were saying with kids might not have latched onto it. I remember I liked it when I was younger, and the person that got me into it actually was our Uncle Matt. He was a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes, and he actually let me borrow some of the books at one point until I started getting my own. But I actually started reading it in the paper near the end of his run, because I never really read the newspaper. Obviously, when you're a kid, that's like one of the last things you're going to read.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. The writing was sophisticated. Calvin had a very advanced vocabulary for someone his age. He's supposed to be, I think, like a 7 or 8 year old boy in the strip. But I think a lot of the imagery and the dialogue did ring true to children as well as adults. Some of the things in the strip, he got ideas from in real life. I remember there was a really sad story about a bird, or it was some kind of raccoon or something that Calvin found. Maybe it was a squirrel. I don't remember. I guess I don't remember as well as I thought I did. Where he found a dead animal and he wanted to, nurse it back to health, and then it ended up dying. There were lessons to be learned in that strip, and I think it had that universal appeal to it. I mean, I kind of compare it. I mean, actually, there is no comparison, but something that's like that now are like the Disney Pixar movies. Because, Disney and all these companies realize that these adults have to drag their kids to see these movies, so they put adult humor into it that kids don't understand, and there's kids' humor in it that adults are like, haha, of course the kids are going to laugh at that, because it's a fart noise or something,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same way with the Calvin and Hobbes strip, was that it appealed to everybody. And I think what you were going back on what you were saying about how there's that temptation for people to say, yeah, let us, we'll license this for you, we'll, do all the toys and things, and we'll just give you the money. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't license it, because he didn't want other people to make the decisions about his strip and something that he created. And he's been a purveyor of, and I say him, I mean Bill Watterson, the creator. He's been someone that has always said that, just because this is a commercialized art form that is run in hundreds or thousands of papers across the country, it's still an art form. Like, there is still skill and creativity behind it doing a comic strip, and he always modeled his strip after like the old comic strips from like the 50s and 60s, where you open up a Sunday paper and a whole page was dedicated just to one particular comic strip. And now you open up the Sunday paper, you got 3 panels of color of some like rudimentary thrown together cartoon, and it's really like the detail and the work behind it has plummeted to what it used to be. And I think he was really the last person to put forth the effort to put out a decent strip for the whole run of the series. And I do definitely agree with the fact. I mean, as an adult, I agree more with him, sticking it to the man and saying, no, I don't want this to be licensed and everywhere. I mean, as a kid, I would have loved to have seen a cartoon, and I would have loved to have a Hobbs tiger as a stuffed animal, but you could never get that. And I think it was funny because I actually remember talking to Uncle Matt once about it. And I told him, I said, wouldn't you, I was like, is this little Adam? Like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon? And he was the first to say, no, I think that would cheapen it, kind of thing. I didn't really know what he was talking about. But he got me to agree with him because we talked about it. I remember said, well, when I'm reading this strip, Calvin and Hobbes has their own voice in my head that my head is made up. And I think if I hear someone else doing the voice of them, it's going to take away the magic I feel when I read this thing. And that's, and I mean, that was like 8 or 9 year old me, and that was Uncle Matt steering me on the right path, So, yeah, I agree with that. That's definitely, I think he did. I think I'm glad he stuck to his guns and kept it the high quality, and it's really the last of something really great. So good talk.
I think that's the danger, or the situation that every author or creator of some sort of non-televised, non-visual. Well, I guess it's a visual, but anybody who creates something that's like a book or something that's not filmed entertainment or merchandise entertainment, that's a dilemma they all face at some point. Should I, give it, famously the author of the Mary Poppins books absolutely had no interest in letting Disney make the movie Mary Poppins. She wanted, no amount of animation involved whatsoever. Mary Poppins was a much more stern, kind of stiff upper lip British character in her books, and clearly the Disney film went a different way with that.
Yeah.
And they actually even ended up making a movie about the struggle to turn Mary Poppins into a movie.
Right, that was the Saving Mr. Banks, right?
Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet, but I really do want to see it.
I did see it. I thought it was a good movie. And then I read more into it, and apparently the movie takes some liberties with the actual story of that. So, but suffice it to say, the lady P.L. Travers was her name. She saw the movie, and she was very upset, and she vowed to never let any more of her proper creations, become films or get licensed in any way for those types of projects.
Yeah, that's like the juggernaut of Disney right there. It's like, okay, well, we're going to make your book into a movie, and we're going to completely screw it up, and you're going to hate us for it. And then 30 or 40 years later, we're going to make a movie about your struggle to make this book into a movie and let us do it, and then we're going to screw that up, too. Is there, like, a track record here that I'm, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break.
Essentially, they're coming to town, and they're doing whatever the fuck they want, and
exactly.
You got to bend over, son.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, there's always some kind of, it's like there's almost like a necessary evil of being part of the entertainment business. Like when you have a property like that, and then all of a sudden, we got to sell something out, and you got to change it this way or change it that way, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
See, I think the problem also comes from the fact that, honestly, look, critical or commercial success isn't necessarily a justification for drastically changing somebody's work, but I think that there's a real dilemma that happens when you have something that obviously was popular enough to sell very well and bring the creator success, and ultimately bring the attention of a company like Disney or what have you to look at you and say, we want to give you money to make this into another form of entertainment. And when that form of entertainment that they make, it takes whatever liberties it takes or whatever. When people end up latching onto that one too, and that becomes successful, there's a dilemma there. What do you do? Do you just dismiss, let's say the film version or whatever, because it's not necessarily true to the source material? Like lots of people obviously latch on to that version and grow up with that as their only kind of knowledge of the work. I think it's a real dilemma. Like for instance, I grew up with the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh and absolutely loved that as a kid. And there's a similar story behind that. A lot of people who just started with the book thought it was silly, thought it was just reductionist and goofy, but that was my introduction and my version of that character. So I mean, what do you do when that happens? It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because the thing about the source material being different, or what's better. I rarely feel like any kind of, it's like the source material is like a book or some other form of media besides a movie. And when that's the source material, I rarely find the like video game version or the movie version or something of a book to be better than what the original medium was in, because the original medium, like I think things were made, or I think things were written as a book or made as a video game or made as a movie first because that's the best medium for them to tell their story. And I think when you branch off and to do other things, like it never is as good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I just feel like, yeah, it's just whatever, And I always go back to that. I mean, I rarely like the second or third version of it better than the source material. One of the only things I do, in fact, like better than the source material, I think, is The Wizard of Oz. That's one thing that I always enjoyed the movie.
Another great
more
example.
Than the book, but because the book was a little weird, and there was a lot of political commentary in the book, and the movie was just kind of like a fantastical type of thing,
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's another one.
Well, I mean, is there anything you like better than the source material?
Yeah, I'm total agreement with The Wizard of Oz. I think that's one of the greatest movies ever made, and it's from 1939, and to this day, so much of that cannot be topped, cannot be touched. It's just an amazing movie. I think it's one of the the top 5 films I think of all time, and I think it should and will be forever. Like I said, Winnie the Pooh is another one that the Disney version was what I came to know and love. I mean, this is a debate that kind of reaches anything really that started out in a different medium than TV or movies or what have you. He-Man was huge when we were kids. Obviously, it's every male child from 1981 to roughly 1990 was certainly aware of it, and more than aware of it, probably a massive fan of it. But even to this day, the debate rages on, because He-Man started out as just toys, and they came with little comic books that sort of had their own version of what He-Man and his friends and enemies and all the characters were about and how they behaved and everything. And then you had another great Saturday morning TV institution, Filmation, kind of bought the rights to do a cartoon, and they made it quite different. They sanded down some of the rough edges, and they made it a little more child friendly. And of course, I believe it was the first cartoon to benefit from the new regulations that once again allowed toy companies to have an involvement in TV, that sort of relaxed the restrictions. And because of that, people called it a half-hour toy commercial and what have you. So they were very good about trying to stick the little moral messages in at the end and make stories about very serious topics that sort of taught kids a lesson or whatever. But ultimately they were beholden to whatever Mattel kind of wanted at the end of the day. They did fight very hard to keep certain storylines in, like to keep the amount of product in each cartoon to a minimum. so it wouldn't be a toy commercial. But yeah, to this day, a lot of people consider that cartoon to not be, the real He-Man. The real He-Man's like a barbarian. He's like Conan. He's a lot more violent and vicious and whatever. That was the little comic book version of him. So I mean, it's almost every area of entertainment. You have some form of this debate going on. It's really interesting because people are
right.
torn.
And I think a lot of times we get lost and we don't even realize what the source material of something is.
Right.
And you mentioned Conan. Conan was a book. By what is the author's name? Was it Robert Howard? I think was his name.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah. And it was a series of books, and then it was made into a movie. And the first one was Conan the Barbarian, and the second one was Conan the Destroyer. And even between the two movies, I mean, wow, that was a drastic difference. I mean, you had Conan the Barbarian was like it was a violent. Movie, there were, it was an R-rated movie, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of, sexual content in it and everything like that.
Absolutely.
Which I've never read the books. I know Uncle Matt was big on the books. We should maybe bring him on sometime and we can talk about that. But, I'm not sure how different that was from the books. It was only one movie, and it was a series of novels. But on top of that, then the second movie came out, I think it was rated like PG. Like, it was a completely... I mean, it was still violent, but it wasn't as violent. You could tell, like, they were killing people, but it wasn't bloody. It wasn't gory. I mean, it's not that I wanted to see that, but, I mean, you're talking about the spirit of the character. Like you were saying, he's more of a Conan type. He's a barbarian. He's a powerful, he kills his enemies, and, he becomes the king of his own land and stuff like that because,
right.
He's destined to do that. That's the story. And they just made it, like, this weird, like... diluted version of Conan, and I was only allowed to watch that one when I was younger because the other one had too much inappropriate things for a child, to see.
Right.
And it's just weird how things evolve from where it started to what it comes into, and I think that's a perfect example of it. And yeah, it's just I think we get lost on where did this come from? Let's read the book. Let's the funny thing is, like, we talk about Star Wars a lot. Star Wars' original medium was a movie, and I throughout the years have read Star Wars licensed novels, and I've hated them because they just do not capture, what it is to be a fan of Star Wars. Star Wars is a visual medium. Like, you need to see things blow up. You need to see lightsabers. You need to see the action along with the story. And that's just the way it was. So, like, that's the original medium of Star Wars. It's like, and it's weird how things kind of get out of control almost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being that it's Christmas time and talking about transferring intellectual properties from one medium to another. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of that is the Star Wars holiday special that was only shown on TV once in, I want to say it was 1979, 1978 maybe, and is considered chiefly by George Lucas to be something that is so bad it shall not be named. And it's bad, but honestly, I don't know. I would argue that there are some equally bad and cringeworthy moments in a great chunk of the prequels that he himself directed and is so proud of. It's a time capsule. It's a nifty little thing to have access to that will, I guess, be forever doomed to bootlegging because he refuses to release it in any official way. But yeah, I mean, especially with the technology of the time, Star Wars certainly lost a little bit when transferred to the small screen and sort of recreated with a Saturday Night Live-esque budget. But yeah, you know what? I think in the spirit of the old holiday, I'm gonna dig that one up and put that on later today. And
Nice.
I did actually talk to our Uncle Matt, and he's interested in coming on here and discussing some of this stuff with us. I'm not sure how soon that'll be. I don't know if it'll necessarily be the next episode or anything like that, but yeah, we'll absolutely get him in here, and it'll be great to pick his brain.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, we share a lot of interest with him. Like I said, we could get him in here to talk about the Conan books. We could talk about Calvin and Hobbes, especially, one of our favorite professional sports is in ice hockey, the National Hockey League. We're
Right.
all fans of the New York Rangers, and I'd like to get his thoughts on, not just the Rangers in general, but a lot of controversy that involves, things with hockey. Like, they're talking about banning fighting in hockey, and there's definitely two sides of the argument on that one. I'd like to get his opinion on that. There's definitely a lot of things that we could get, talk to him about. So that would be great. We get him on here sometime. Yeah, definitely. I would like to get it at some point where we could actually record this together, at some point too.
Yeah.
Try to figure out a weekend we can get together, and maybe that'll be like a time to do it. So we'll be on the lookout for that in the future.
That'll be an event episode.
It'll be an event, a special WAMCast event, kicking the new year around February.
Exactly.
I don't want 2015 to start. Well, real quick before we go, since we're on the topics of movies I did mention earlier, I want to talk about the new Terminator movie coming out.
Right.
Well, first and foremost, which Terminator movie do you think is the best? Because there are 4 of them, and I would pick one of them to be the best. What do you think it is?
I mean, it's got to be Terminator 2, right? Judgment Day?
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Yep, I definitely think Terminator 2. I mean, I think the first Terminator was a good movie, and I think it was limited by the time in which it was made. I mean, it was 1984, I believe, when that first one came out. It still kind of holds up, though. I mean, the special effects are a little shaky in that, but I think the story is pretty decent, and it's definitely withstood the test of time. But yeah, I definitely think Terminator 2 is the best. And then after that, they kind of got away from it a little bit. You know, I think that Terminator 2, it seemed like there was an end. You know, it seemed like the story was over.
Right.
Nothing could possibly happen. And then Terminator 3 came out, and then in an effort just to cash in on something that has already done well, it's like they have to make up something like, oh, you know what? The Terminator in the Terminator 2 wasn't really after John Connor. He was after some girl that was in his class whose dad actually is in the military who heads the Skynet program. I'm like, really? That's what you came up with for doing the third movie? Like, come on. Like, just give me a break. And I think it was just terrible. They had someone else play John Connor, and I always thought Eddie Furlong would have been perfect to reprise his role for that. He probably said, you know, screw you, I don't want to do it or something. I don't know his personal situation or anything like that. And then the Christian Bale Terminator, I think, was better than Terminator 3, but still kind of, it still didn't really mesh with, like, the original storyline.
Right.
So I always thought 2 was the best, just because I think it was. I mean, that definitely would stand the test of time. I can watch that now, and like it's still really good. You know, just story-wise, special effects are still pretty decent. So, well, that brings me up to the 5th Terminator that's coming out. I believe this coming year. I think it's summer of this year, 2015. It's called Terminator Genesis or Genesis or something like that. You haven't heard anything about this yet?
I've heard, I've heard so much as the title and that it exists, but beyond that, I've got nothing. I haven't seen anything or read anything.
Okay. Allow me to walk you through the trailer.
All right.
And you can give me your initial gut reaction. They have a full feature trailer out. You can go on IMDb and watch it, or Yahoo Movies, whatever. And it starts out with, it's the war in the future. You know, John Connor's giving a speech. He's talking about how he found out they sent a Terminator back to kill his mother before he was born, and a young soldier named Kyle Reese volunteers to go back to protect her. Okay, so this is like the original story, right? Mm-hmm. They put him in the time machine. Shows up to 1984. As you know, in the first movie, he basically floats from a bum, and he breaks into a department store to get some more, to get like shoes or something. So in the trailer, all this is happening, and he's in the store, and there's like a cop in there, like looking for him, and all of a sudden, this van or like a big truck like bursts in through the windows, and it's a woman driving the car, and she's like, looks at him and is like, come with me if you want to live. And he's like, what? And she's like, now, soldier. So he gets in the van, and she like shoots the cop, who turns out to be the T-1000 Terminator, and they drive off. Right. And you're like, what? And he says, John sent me back to, protect you. And she's like, I know, from the Terminator that came back to this time, like, we already took care of him. And he's like, who's we? And then all of a sudden, you see a scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger walking towards 1984 Terminator and blowing him away. Okay, so what do you think about this so far? I mean, come on.
Well, it's another level of mindfuckery, isn't it?
Yep, and it's another, what we like to call a reboot, which we have broached the subject of our last podcast about the Ghostbusters, whether or not it's going to be a reboot or like a passing of the torch. Obviously, this is a rebooted movie because the timeline has been virtually skewed off into some weird thing where Sarah Connor and the Terminator are already taken care of. Like, it's almost like they're jumping around to try to stop this again. And it's like, why couldn't we just have stopped at Terminator 2?
Right.
Like, I can't even take it.
Well, that's to sort of go back to the topics from earlier in the conversation. I mean, it all really ties together because that's another example, another form that, the coercion that large corporations and lots of money can have over, the creators of a property. Sometimes it doesn't take the form of, sell out to this medium from that medium or whatever. Sometimes it takes the form of, let's make yet another unnecessary sequel or prequel, or let's start it over. Let's look at what's trending. Let's look at, the metrics and what the fucking numbers tell us that people's opinions are instead of, actual human feedback. The numbers tell us that reboots aren't popular, so let's reboot it without calling it a reboot. And, it's just it's a goddamn endless rabbit hole. Obviously I'm going to have to pass judgment a delay passing judgment rather until we can actually see the whole thing. But yeah, it seems a little fucky in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not. Like when I watched it, I just said, "Come on," and I showed my wife because my wife actually likes Terminator 2, and she's a fan of that, and we both looked at each other like, "Are you serious?" I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like it's like what stupid thing can we come up with to just keep it going? And I mean, even if they're like crunching numbers and looking at demographics and things, like who the hell still wants to see a Terminator movie? Like I don't. Like I'm done.
Yeah.
Like the last two stunk, and like I don't want to see a third one that's going to stink, and I'm going to waste my money, even if I waste $1.25 getting it from a red box.
Right.
Yeah, that's better than wasting $12 in a movie theater to see it. I'm not even gonna like give that the time of day. Like that's just it comes to the thing where something again that I have liked or loved for a really long time just beat to death until I can't stand it anymore. And it's just like, well, I'm done.
Yeah, well, I think they don't realize that's what it does to people. Like the very people that they're making this to, I can't even say they're making it for the fans or to appease fans. They're making it to collect more money from fans. Everything has a fan base, and the fan base is seen as literally a license to print money by the these studios and whoever makes these decisions. And I don't understand how they don't see that when they do things like this, when they drag these things out and they beat it to death and water it down and alter it from what it originally was, they're literally killing their golden goose. They're shooting themselves in the foot. That obviously happened with Star Wars, and on and on and on. Everything. It's like if a property is popular and successful enough and is around long enough, it'll it'll live to see its own demise, in that form, and it's pretty depressing. Yeah, look, it's obviously Terminator 2. In this case, is the benchmark, is the the standard bearer that is most likely not going to be lived up to. Not only that, certainly not going to be surpassed. Obviously, you're going to always be able to depend on money from a certain group of the fan base. But again, what is the point ultimately? Why, just let it be what it was, I think.
Yeah. Well, one final thought with that too is that the original director, James Cameron, he directed Terminator and Terminator 2. Now, he is known as being a very meticulous and detail-oriented director. And
right.
I think if, I could probably say with some degree of certainty that if he was involved with the third one and the fourth one and this one, they would be completely different and way better movies because they took the franchise out of it. Because, unfortunately, even though it's like his property at first, he directed it was his story, the studios own the rights to those movies, so they can do whatever they want with them. I'm assuming. I mean, I could be wrong. But if he was involved with those, they would have been much better. I mean, love or hate his movies, like he is very meticulous and he will do it down to the very detail,
right.
Of what needs to be done. And I think they would have been way better if they. And that's the other thing too. Like these franchises start out with one director and then they get passed off to someone else to take the reins, and they're the ones that have the final say in what goes on the film.
Right.
And it's kind of sad. That something that was so good has gone this far to be something that I don't even care about anymore.
Yeah, it's almost it's terrible. It's almost an incentive to not be successful. It's like, oh man, work hard and produce something really high quality that people love, and it makes a shit ton of money and does really well for you, and it's so good that we're just gonna fucking take it from you and try to keep it going in perpetuity beyond what the property can even sustain.
Right.
It's who wants that?
It's a sad state of affairs again. So we'll leave you on that low note of terrible remade movies.
Well, you know what? No, I'm gonna go back to wrapping presents and getting the spirit. I discovered recently that Pee-wee's Playhouse is on Netflix, and that tickles me to no end.
Yes,
so,
awesome.
The Warm and Fuzzies will be back in my life. I'll put that on while I finish up, and I think all will be good for the rest of the day.
Good idea. Well, let me wrap up here. There's a few things I want to put out there about some of the things we talked about. We talked a little bit about at length about Calvin and Hobbes. And if you do have Netflix, anybody that is listening, or yourself, my friend Claude, if you go watch a documentary on there, it's called Dear Mr. Watterson, and it's about basically the history of the Strip. Bill Watterson himself is not actually in the documentary. I believe he probably didn't want to do it. But it's a really good look at the Strip and what it's meant to a lot of people and a lot of famous, relatively famous cartoon strips now. A lot of their creators and writers and artists weigh in on Calvin and Hobbes, and he actually goes to Bill Watterson's hometown, and you can kind of tell that he got a lot of the ideas for the strip, maybe even if it's just visually for the strip from his hometown. And it's a really good documentary, so if you want to take a look at that,
nice.
That's also good. They do have the complete Calvin and Hobbes collection, which is every single Calvin and Hobbes strip ever produced. That's you can probably find that on Amazon or something. It's pretty neat. I have that. It's one of the awesomest things that I own. Most awesome. Awesome isn't really a word, is it? I'm just making up stuff.
It is now.
So yeah, we can take a look at that. And yeah, I'm sure there's a plethora of Christmas movies on. I will also get back to wrapping some presents, and we're having the in-laws over for dinner, and Christmas Eve festivities today. So yeah, we'll get back in the spirit of things and and whatnot. So anything you want to leave us on? Maybe any upcoming topics we're going to talk about, anything like that?
Oh, you never know around these parts, but I'm sure we'll keep them entertainment based and politically based, philosophically based. I mean, at some point, I guess we probably have to touch on what's going on with the silly situation in the entertainment world with North Korea and I don't know, did they or didn't they cause the hack of Sony and all that stuff. Apparently, they're actually going to release it, so that's a developing story.
Yes.
Obviously from the last podcast, the civil unrest and everything rages on. I heard of yet another potentially unarmed black man right around Ferguson, where the first major, I think it was Michael Brown, was killed. Another one has happened in that area, so that's we're not getting any better in that, it seems like. But these things are developing, and we're always going to be able to wrap our twisted minds around it and spit out our unique take. So there's always something to look forward to.
Exactly, and definitely along with that, there were the almost like revenge killings of those two police officers in New York that they were in their car, and there's a lot of backlash from that. There's a lot of people in the political realm saying that people like Al Sharpton and Mayor Bill de Blasio and even the president have almost condoned the violence, which I believe is false, but we can talk about that as well. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up, and stay tuned for our Uncle Matt. Always the entertaining individual. We'll have him on at some point to talk about some other topics we like, and yeah, let's get back into the Christmas mood for another day, and then we can wait till next year. We'll be like the Who's in Whoville. We'll just start counting down the day after Christmas. 365 days to go, 364 days to go, so always fun. Beautiful. All right, well, that's where I'll leave it. Anything else to add?
No. Melakaliki Maka, for those listening to us in Hawaii.
That is the thing to say.
Exactly. This has been episode 2. I'm your friend Claude.
And I'm Cousin Adam.
And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good Christmas, everybody.
Bye. Merry Christmas.